I can't wait any longer.
Let's go.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
Damn, we need to make this thing even.
I can't believe it's you. Don't tell anyone. I'm not ready for this. Don't tell anyone. Thank you.
Hello and welcome, all you Breen Weavers. I hope you're all well and had a lovely Halloween. You are listening to the only podcast dedicated to one of the most interesting film directors of the 21st century. In a change to the podcast teased at the end of our last episode, today you'll be getting a double dose of Double Down as I speak to a pair of artists involved in Neil Breen's 2005 directorial debut. Yeah, I decided to bring you something a little bit different this month as a thank you to you all. To everyone who downloaded, listened to and supported our previous episode with Victoria Viveros. That episode received over double the usual downloads through the podcast providers and 7 times more views on YouTube. So a really heartfelt thank you again. And please continue to spread the word and like, subscribe, share, etc, etc. So later on this show you'll be hearing from Nick Fry, who worked in the camera department for the entirety of the shoot. But first, I'll be talking to Joe Boyd, who played the terrorist picked up by Neil in his famous red Ferrari. Joe also shows up again in the climactic gunfight. Whether or not this is the same character is something we discuss, as well as Neil's plans to distribute the film and how Joe first discovered the film had been released after being confronted by his son. I found a really interesting aspect in Joe's interview, which will also crop up again with Nick, of how the perception of appearing in a Neil Breen film can be so different as to how we might expect. To us as fans or merely fascinated parties, we may blindly expect this to be a momentous and memorable occasion, but of course to those on set, it's simply one job out of many. And that curiosity or compulsion to immerse oneself in the Breeniverse is just not there. Where were you before Double Down? Where were you pre-2005? Because you were acting, weren't you? Had it always been a dream?
I had started, I had always been like an amateur, actor, community theater and things like that. I started acting professionally probably in 2003 through improv. So I was studying improv with the Second City in Las Vegas, which is one of the world's biggest improv schools. And from that had gotten, within about 9 months of starting to train, got a couple jobs on the Vegas Strip doing comedy, but just not making a ton of money. But it was my only job at the time because I was in 2 stage shows in Vegas that paid the bills.
So how did you learn about Double Down then? How did this audition come your way?
I was making it was 20-some years ago. I was probably making $35,000 a year on my stage show. Not enough money, but enough to keep me going. And I had to piece it together with all these other acting gigs. So I was just always on the hunt for auditions everywhere. I had an agent in Vegas and an agent in LA. It's about a 4-hour drive from Vegas to LA. So I would often drive to LA, do an audition, drive back, do my show, drive back the next day for the callback. I was driving all over the place, but I was also pretty good at hunting down auditions on my own. So I can honestly, I'm sure this didn't come from my agent. So I probably found it on Craigslist back in the day. You would find auditions there. And there were also some sites like Actors Access and a couple of other ones where actors could go on and look for auditions. And movies like Neil's tended to bypass the agent. So I was looking to just get any gig I could get. And I would, if I had to wager, I would say I found it on Craigslist, but I don't really remember.
How common was that?
Back then, I would check it every day. It was common. It was usually student films or Neil's film, non-union. And I got to a point where there were a lot on there for free if you wanted to work for free. But I got to a point where I made a firm commitment that unless there was a really great reason, I was professional now, so I was gonna get paid. So I remember, I think it's paid $300 a day or something like that. So I applied to audition for it. I got a couple of interesting gigs off Craigslist through those years. And there were, even back then, there were a ton of scams. Like there would be things that would say you were going to audition for Grey's Anatomy or something, but that any union gig's not going to be on there. But if you were wanting to do non-union, especially film work, you could find interesting little gigs on there.
So how did that audition process go then? What was involved in the audition process with Neil?
I can tell you I don't remember anything weird about it. I do remember reading for it, but I can't even really remember honestly like where it was or Neil at that process. I remember more on set, and as I recall, it wasn't written as a big role anyway, so I was probably in and out in like 10 minutes, if I had to guess.
Well, in your words, what was your role? What did your scenes involve?
I was a terrorist, which good for him for not racially profiling terrorists, I guess, because I'm very much a white dude. And as I recall, I have a vague memory. I actually clearly remember the phone call of him calling to say I got the job. I don't know why I remember that, but it was right after my show. I was doing the show called Tony and Tina's Wedding at the Rio. And he called me after the show. I think that's why I remember, because it would have been like 10 at night, which is weird. And he offered me the job. And I do remember thinking as he was offering to, I don't remember what this is, because I think I had auditioned like maybe months before and had just assumed either I didn't get it or it wasn't happening. But again, I was doing this stuff like I was auditioning for stuff like this at least every week. So I'd forgotten about it, and he said his name, and it kind of sounded familiar. And then I think, if I recall, he was shooting within a few days.
Who were you working? You were a terrorist. A terrorist for whom?
I don't know, man. I haven't seen the movie. No, I couldn't tell you a bit anything about this story, sadly.
A meeting is arranged with your character. You're picked up in the Ferrari. However, you then do show up towards the end of the movie as well. Is that a different role? Is that the same character?
I was not informed that I was playing two characters, so I assume it was still. I wore the same clothes, as I recall.
Yes, yes. Well, obviously not the fake mustache. That's gone.
That's a vivid memory of showing. I showed up on set, and he handed me that, and he's like, "Put this on," and it was in a Halloween store bag. He had gone to the Halloween store and bought this, and that's when I remembered knowing, like, putting it on, being like, "I don't know what I got myself into exactly here." Because I am used to small, like, I had done student films. I was used to small budget stuff, but usually there would at least be like a prop master or a wardrobe person. And that's the first thing that struck me, is it seemed very much like a home movie. Like, he was a one-man show. I don't even remember if there were cameramen. I think he did it. I don't know. Maybe I was just there on light days.
How long were you on set for?
I'm pretty sure it was 2 days, only because I vaguely remember getting a $600 check. I think it was 2 different days. I believe they may not have been full days. I think one day was at the train yard, which felt like we weren't supposed to be there. I remember that.
What gave that vibe then? What made you think that maybe you weren't supposed to be there?
I mean, we just didn't meet anyone there. There was no, like, you're supposed to get permits when you shoot places, obviously. I lived in Vegas for 10 years. I still go back there all the time. Kind of feels like home. I had no idea where that was. Like, I tried to remember. There's not like many train tracks in Vegas. Like, I have no idea how he found that place or where it was. I think he drove me there from somewhere, and it was just kind of just showing up.
When you showed up on set, having had experience, what were your first impressions, and did they change at all during those 2 days?
No, I think my first read was pretty accurate. It wasn't normal. I knew that. But I didn't feel like unsafe or anything. I do wonder sometimes if I would have, if I was like a younger female or something. But if this may be sacrilege in Neil Breen world, but I figure if this guy comes at me, I could take him or get away. I'm not sure he's actually a god in real life. But he was nice, and he was very professional in the sense of, like, what didn't want to crack jokes and was just telling me what to do, and like he acted like a real director. But I clearly remember thinking, nobody's ever going to see this, so I'll just do my thing, get my money, and get out. And I do remember asking him, what's the plan here? Because I was also producing a little movie of my own and would end up becoming a movie producer. And I was very concerned about distribution for my movie. I was like, what are you going to do? And he said something like, I flip it, I sell it to China. And he said, all they care, I think he said, it's been so many years, but I think he said something like, all they care about are cars and guns and sex or something like that. And he's like, if we got that in the movie, we're good. And he's like, I'll sell it to China and they'll buy it, and then I'll make another one or something like that. So I believed that made sense with what I was seeing, is that somehow he had found like some weird way to make crazy cheap movies that had no plot or story, best I could tell. to make a little money in China. So he probably really was just trying to make a cheap movie to make a few bucks on it. That's what he told me he was doing.
How was the film kind of pitched to you? Was the plot explained to you at all, or?
I do vaguely remember, like I said, he seemed like at least a competent director in the sense that he would tell me beforehand, okay, here's what's going on. You're a terrorist and I'm gonna put this in your neck and you fall asleep and I'm gonna take off your beard. Like he would tell me what was gonna happen, but I certainly wasn't, it didn't seem like the sort of set where I would ask for my motivation. You know what I mean? I got the vibe that I was a more experienced actor than the ones I was working with. And I wasn't that experienced of an actor. I'd only been doing it professionally for a couple of years, but I didn't want to be the guy that came in and pretended like I knew what it was. I felt like I was helping a guy make a home movie. So I wasn't going to like be actory about it all. I got the feeling he cared about the product, but not my performance. So if you feel that as an actor, it's very deflating in a sense. You just have to kind of accept, all right.
So what gave you that impression with Neil then on Double Down? Was it just how he directed, that it was just a more focus on be here, stand here, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, because it's been so long ago, I don't really know the timeline of it. But I'm sure once he told me his plan was to flip it and sell it and make some money, I was like, all right. So we're not making art, clearly.
So when did you become aware then of the cult of Neil Breen?
No, so I have two boys. At the time I shot that movie, they were like 2 and 4 years old, and now they're 25 and 23. And my older son, when he was driving in high school, so he was like 16 or 17. So this would have been what, 7 years ago or something. He had stumbled upon Neil Breen on YouTube, and his friends from high school were gathered at our house watching it. I assume ironically, just for fun. And I was on a date with my wife, and I came home, and he's like, "Dad, Dad, 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 get in here!" And they had paused it right, like when I'm in the car with my thing. He's like, "Is that you? Is that you?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, where'd you see that? He thought it was. He still thinks it's the coolest thing ever. He'll be very excited to listen to this podcast because I was like sort of mortified. All of his friends were there, and I'm like, "Oh man." It legit, like I knew it was me. And when I saw the Halloween beard, it was a free shot on the screen. I was like, oh man, I definitely remember doing something with a Halloween beard. They had to tell me what movie it was because I couldn't remember Neil's name or the name of the movie or anything like that. And it wasn't on my IMDb back then.
Obviously, you weren't even aware the film had been released, so you hadn't seen the film. So have you sat down and watched the film since?
No, I've watched the trailer, and my son has showed me some of the clips. I'm not opposed to watching it for fun. I would need some bourbons and some friends, some bourbons and friends.
But did you watch your scenes? Did you sit down and watch your scenes?
I think he showed me some of them. I don't know if I saw all of them. I saw the being knocked out, and I saw the train yard one.
And you haven't gone on to dip your toe into any more Neil Breen films and give them a whirl?
I have not, and I hope I don't sound like disingenuous to folks that like him. It's just I'm sure at some point I'll have some shots with my kid and watch one of Neil's movies. And I don't want to be like, I definitely don't want to be ungrateful. And I made a TikTok in case Neil would ever see it, thanking him for giving me a job. Yeah. I needed I needed diaper money back then. I needed money, and he let me be a professional actor, and that's a big deal. It wasn't a joke to him. He wasn't trying to be funny. He had a plan, and he seemed to accomplish it.
Yeah.
And I do respect that. And he did nothing at all to me to make me feel like he was not a good dude. So we didn't chat much. He just kind of was in that regard, like a normal director in many ways, kind of obsessed with his product. And then fair. I got paid on time, which is like not common really in non-union movie world. So those were about the two lasting impressions I had of him.
After here, where did you go on with your career?
I kept acting. So I eventually left Vegas and went on to LA and did some soap operas and a bunch of smaller roles in movies and sitcoms and commercials and things like that. What I was always best at was improv. So I did stage improv work, and then started producing movies. I made a couple low budget movies just myself. I did a poker movie called Hitting the Nuts. That's a comedy about I played an Amish farmer that had to win a poker tournament to save the farm. And I think that one really holds up in terms of comedy and content. It's very much like a Christopher Guest movie. It's straight up, Waiting for Guffman or Best in Show or something like that. Started a production company that ultimately led me more away from entertainment and more into usually where the money is for that kind of stuff. So making commercials and videos for major companies, and I was doing that for about 10 years. Now I spend almost all my time helping people tell stories as a consultant, doing workshops around how to tell a better story, and specifically how to tell your own story and how to see what story you're living, really kind of how to find your life calling and what's next for you, and do a ton of workshops around that kind of stuff.
One last question. And in the final shootout at the end, and you shoot your friend, again, do we know why? Do we know the logic behind that?
No. I do remember him telling me to shoot that guy. And then I had to figure out, because I don't, if I recall, it's like an automatic weapon or something, right? It wasn't like a pistol. And like I was supposed to shoot him like right next to me. So I had to like fake the recoil. That is the one time I do kind of remember being a little actor. I didn't say anything to him, but I'm like, how in the world am I going to make it look like this really is a gunshot holding it this way? Because I feel like the gun would fly out of my hand.
In the final shot, you've got a large automatic rifle in your left hand, and he's on your left, and then you pull out a pistol from your right hand side and you shoot him.
Maybe I did bring it up then, because I remember I'm like, I don't think this is gonna work, man. Maybe he gave me the pistol because I said that, but that's awesome. Look, I'm an action star. That's good to know.
A colossal thank you to Joe for taking the time to talk to me there, and strange to remember those 2 days from 2 decades ago. 2 days that fill us with fascination and excitement, but 2 days to Joe that were naturally just another 2 days at the office. You can learn more about Joe Boyd at his website, www.calledforadventure.com, which is a haven for the weary, burnt out and bored who want more. And you'll find the content, people and experiences you need to fully live your own great adventure. Please also support Joe by following his TikTok account at Called for Adventure. Let us now meet Nick Fry, our second interview of this podcast. Nick would go on to work on television shows such as The Sopranos and the Stephen King adaptation The Stand, but in 2005, Nick was the first assistant camera on Double Down, so has the honour of being our first interviewee who will be sharing their experiences from behind the camera. We talked about how the crew was recruited, shooting nude scenes, and behind the scenes friction. What I'd be really interested to know is, because I know you said you watched Double Down yesterday, because obviously this film was released nearly 20 years ago, possibly filmed 20 years ago. Was it filmed in 2004, 2005?
Ironically, I was just cleaning out records yesterday, and I found some old work history of mine, and I had certain dates in 2025 that I had written down that we had done like a day here, a day there, and I don't recall it being that way. I thought we had a whole at least week or two where we shot steady every day, where we got the bulk of the filming done. And I thought that was in 2024, maybe like late summer, early fall, and then 2025 for sure. Yeah. 2004, sorry, and then into 2005. Yeah.
So it's been 20 years since you worked on this film. In general, what was your experience watching it last night?
That's a whole thing, because we had a buddy of mine that also worked on the film. He pointed it out a couple years after we did it, and he sent me the trailer, and he said, "Look at this. This is great. Look at what's out there. We did this. Check this out." And it was the Double Down trailer. So I got to see the trailer, and that's the first time I'd seen any of it through the camera, because as a assistant camera, I was not ever seeing the actual image, So the same thing with last night. I watched the whole film. A lot of this stuff, that's the first time I've ever seen it. Yeah. So watching it last night, it brought back some memories of being there, and some of these scenes. I was, oh yeah, I remember him running down that hill, like shouting, that long hill mountain. I don't know, just running down, shouting. I have to say, I remember us getting a kick out of that as we just all watched it.
So where were you before Double Down? What were you doing in the lead up?
I was pretty new in the business. I had started within a year of that. I want to say only a few months, but I'm not exactly sure. I was doing various types of projects, nothing of real substance. They were smaller local type things usually. Although the very first thing I did was a hidden camera show called Scare Tactics, where I just filled in a few days. And that's where Andres Porras, the director of photography on Double Down Found Me, he was on that show, and he brought me and a few of the people, basically the whole crew, I think, into Double Down, which was all of like I think 6 people. So that, and that shaped the experience a little bit too. None of us knew Neil, and we were all kind of a little clique, a little group that had, either most of us had worked together on these little projects before, and we were going into it as sort of like friends. And so there were definitely times where Neil had his thing, and yeah, he's very guarded. I don't believe there was a script passed out. I don't believe there weren't sides where we have the day's work where we could kind of plan this from start to finish. The day was in Neil's head, and he would basically tell us. This is my recollection anyway. He would tell us what he needed to tell us to get the shot at the moment, and mostly he would tell the DP, and then it would just trickle to us what we needed to do, like where we needed to build the camera and carry the stuff out there and do it and get the shot.
And how was the project described to you?
We're doing a movie. We're doing a 35 millimeter movie. You can be a camera assistant on a 35 millimeter feature. I hadn't done that before because I don't know if I learned to. Maybe I learned to load on this movie. Actually, I would go on and be a film loader on other types of projects, more like, I don't know if I should say professionally, because Neil did pay us. The checks cleared. That was, it wasn't an issue there, but and it wasn't horrible money for not being experienced in the business. I was a newbie. I don't even know if Neil knew that. In fact, I would doubt that he had any idea that we were kind of learning on the go. It was even to the point where there were 2 camera assistants. I don't know if your listeners are really familiar with the camera department on a film, but one is usually doing the slate, the clapboard, and writing reports and helping lens changes, helping with filter changes. And then the first assistant does the focus pulling. It's the primary, and then they'll help build the camera and do these other things too. But it's really, they're the focus puller. So me and Holly, the 2 ACs, we actually switched off several times during the filming. We just to get job experience. So I would be pulling focus for a few days. And then it's like, okay, no, I'm going to load the film. Holly, you pull focus. We just traded jobs. And Neil, I'm sure there was a moment where he asked that, like, I thought she was doing that. What are you guys doing? And to us, it didn't really matter, and we didn't really care. It was just like job training. And I was trying to figure out if he actually shot those aerials, because I feel like it's possible. There are people in town that do aerials. That he might have went up in a helicopter and did that, but maybe not.
I think that will be stock footage.
I had no idea there was going to be that much stock because we didn't shoot that. We didn't have a script. So it's just like, it's all new to me. A lot of this stuff, the stuff I saw in the movie. But back to the cinematography, I did have to laugh when I watched the credits, and the cinematographer was just put as a camera operator. Didn't even get a DP credit, a director of photography credit. But Andres definitely was a DP. Maybe Neil considered himself the DP because he told him where to put the camera or something like this. But Andres definitely was a director of photography.
How long was the shoot, and how much were you involved in?
Yeah, I wish I had better answer on that. In my memory, it was a couple weeks. I thought we did 2 weeks, and then there were pickups. There were several days throughout early 2005 that I would go out just a day at a time, and that's when you'd see these other camera operators. The pickup ones, Andres wasn't involved. I think there might have been difference of opinions or issues, or maybe he was just busy. But
so you were there pretty much for every scene that was filmed?
I think I was there for most all of it, if not all of it.
So how was Neil as a director then? Because obviously he's a debut director. This is his first feature film. As you've kind of said there, a lot of the crew knew each other. You were tight, you were friendly. How was it to work for him?
It was okay. I like that word, guarded, actually. He wasn't mean or anything. He did have an air about him, like an assuredness, and he didn't really chit chat a lot. He was pretty down to the point, and direct. And he was there to get this this vision, this project made. And so we didn't have a lot of personal time together. We would ride together in cars with gear and each other. And I think he drove that Mercedes, isn't it? That black Mercedes, the whole time. And I want to say he was by himself, because I think that's where most of the props were, where we would go out to various places. Because of course he was all the props. It was all him, the whole art department, right? So I mean, we'd see him. We were in his house. Some of the scenes were shot in his house. But it was, again, I don't think there was a lot of get to know you, but there wouldn't be with the director in most other sets either. He's there to do his job. But he could be personal. He could be sort of warm. I remember him smiling some, but mostly it was, he was there to get his movie made. There were moments he would get frustrated, of course, but it's like when you're doing something where you're wearing all of these hats like he was. I think I can't blame him for getting flustered. There was definitely a meltdown by the water with the vials and there was definitely one point we all had to just stand back and wait a while for him to get it back together, because he just totally got flustered and had a total meltdown there. But
so what caused that? What was it that he was getting flustered about?
I think it might have been a confluence of it was hot out. We're out in the sun. The DP and like as the project went on, there was starting to be more friction between him and the cinematographer, and difference of opinion or whatever it was. Also, I think he might have forgot some props he wanted to have there, or I think it just it all just added up. He kind of lost it, and it wasn't but he wasn't yelling at us. It wasn't. He never got abusive to. I don't think there was abuse to us or anything.
What was the difference opinions? Was it over how to frame the shot,
how the shot should be? Because I'm sure, and that I don't have real specifics. It's been too long, but I think that's just kind of like a general memory I have, is that it was getting more. The DP was getting a little more resigned to just like, well, this is what he wants, then whatever. This is all we can do, kind of attitude. And I think you'll have that in some cases where people just, Neil, again, he wants to control everything and make it his way. And I think that might have been just something that, of course, is going to build up. If you have a cinematographer who has their idea and and they're bringing their expertise, and they want that to be on the table as well and utilized, and the director doesn't want that, and then it's just over time it's just going to kind of break down.
Was he collaborative? Was he taking on advice, or was he more just kind of very focused?
Well, I think it was probably a combination. Again, he couldn't see the image, and not only that, he's in all of it every scene. That's another thing I think I had to see it to realize, because we, as we're doing it, I think back then I probably realized it, but I've forgotten, and I'm watching it last night, and it's an hour and a half, and it's probably an hour 27 minutes of Neil. It's like he's in every shot almost, and like have this image of him looking up and after the take and saying, did we get it, or is that okay, how is it, whatever, just checking while he's still in place after every shot. I think it was a little bit of both. Some he might have his broader vision that he would tell Andres about how he wants the shot to be, where he wants it, and then at that point he had to let Andres do it, frame it through the lens. I don't know how often Neil actually looked through the lens to see it, because he had to be out there in the shot.
Did anybody ever kind of think, as you said, Neil's kind of in every shot, about whether there should have been any more coverage?
I was thinking about that last night. I really don't think we did coverage. I think we shot to edit, and that's the kind of stuff that will be hard for a DP. Like, that's the kind of stuff that a DP is kind of in their wheelhouse. It's kind of in their role to make sure you cover it and to think about and to help the director get that, for the edit, so they can. And I want to say that's part of where there might have been some trouble too, is from my recollection, Neil wasn't really thinking that way. Like, we need to cover this angle and that angle and that angle, because we're going to go between them, and we'll have a safety for this, if it, whatever. It was just like, just shoot it exactly how he's going to cut it. And that's not always efficient, and that's not always good as a workflow, to get it done in, like I said, the most efficient way.
Were there things suggested him?
I'm sure early on, the DP understood. I'm sure he did, and I think that's what I was saying. Later on, he just started to let go of it, because it was like, what's the point? This guy, he's got his vision of what he wants, and I can't do it. I can't change that. Of course, you notice things when you're in that position, because once the camera's rolling, there's time to just sit back and think and wonder, like, what exactly is going on here? Why is he wearing latex gloves to type on the computer out in the desert? I mean, some things might start to come up.
Did any of that affect the atmosphere on set?
Not so much for us, because it was like just a few of us, but I think between Neil and I think it affected Neil, because he probably felt more frustrated as it went on as well. But they just weren't getting along very well, and I think that's part of why I said there was a meltdown one day. I think it was later on in the project, in the filming, and yeah, if you don't feel like you're getting support from his side, he didn't feel like he probably was getting support, and we're just this crew that we're a unit that he's not part of, and then from the DP side, it's this guy won't listen to what I tell him. Why am I here?
Did the location filming go all right? Did that all run smoothly?
I don't think we did permits or anything. I can't imagine we got real permits. I think we just kind of stole it. But part of being an indie film, it's good because it was so small. I mean, it was, like I said, 5 of us plus Neil or whatever, and that's a lot easier to steal than if you have, if it's a unit of like 50 people or 100 people or whatever on a crew. And so I think we just went around these places. Don't quote me if anybody's, if I'm not supposed to say that, but I'm pretty sure that's how we did it. It was a guerrilla, indie filmmaking project. Yeah, I don't remember there being any major hiccups. There was one, there was one that was almost, and I believe that was the pool scene. That was close to not happening. I know there was, and I can't remember how much we had shot already at that point with her, but I know she was apprehensive about that scene, especially because it was a nude scene. Yeah, I do remember her being really uncomfortable and actually looking at us kind of like, is this okay? Should I do this? Am I looking for some kind of reassurance? And at that point, I mean, it's like there was enough trust that, like, yeah, this guy isn't, like, we're all here, nothing like crazy, nothing bad's gonna happen. Like, as long as you're comfortable with the image. But I will say I don't remember the scrotum shot. I don't think I saw that again until I saw the film. Like, amazing. I didn't realize that angle. I think that was the first time I'd seen it. Like I said, I was probably standing off to the side. Maybe I was loading film that day. I wasn't pulling focus, so I didn't realize the coverage we got on that shot. And I think they might have, and it's possible that they tamed it down. I don't know if there was more intended, and that was the compromise. That shot, it was basically just her, just the one angle, she's just standing there, right? So I think that might have been part of it too. And they covered certain parts. Her breasts were, they had pasties for that, so it was, they did what they could to make her feel more comfortable.
Was there an excitement amongst the crew, or was there a feeling that you were making something of value?
Well, that's a good question. We were a little skeptical of it. In fact, I was surprised when Eduardo showed me the trailer, and I was like, oh my god, he finished it, it came out cool. And then I was surprised to see there was a following of it, because it was not the way I would approach filmmaking or make a film, right? So but just during, there were moments where we're like, what is this? Why would you do it this way? Personally, I didn't have a feeling that this was going to go really far and be a major thing.
What I always ask is about the catering, because he caters himself. What was the catering?
Oh, I love it, because that got me a good laugh yesterday in the credits. There's a lot of shots of tuna cans in the car, and the tuna cans didn't come empty. Let me just put it that way. Neil lived on that tuna during the movie. He had to get those ready, so he really would eat those. We had the choice of tuna or cold cuts, so we usually made cold cut sandwiches. There was bread and cold cuts. So that was a good chuckle seeing the catering. Of course he did. He did everything almost, so including that.
Did you get yourself a little on-screen role?
No, at least not that made the cut. I don't remember doing that, but there is the sound guy. Played one of the terrorists. The boom guy, Maurice, is also one of the terrorists in the shootout scenes.
Is there any particular reason why you didn't work with him again on future projects?
I'm not sure. I had these handwritten notes about, I don't know if it was for tax purposes or why I started logging my work. I did see my rate kept going up. I kept charging him more. Every pickup day, it looked like I had a higher rate. I don't know if that was a turnoff. It should be if it was. So maybe I priced myself out for him.
This was the biggest crew he ever used. All his future projects pretty much became one person on sound, one person on camera.
Oh, really?
So why do you think he had this larger crew for the first film, which then completely changed for the rest? Is that a money-saving thing? Is it a control thing?
Probably both. I mean, this was my understanding is that the Double Down was financed by his architecture business. I don't know what the budget of Double Down was. Most of it was the actual film processing, and the stock probably cost money and stuff like that. And crew costs and everything. But also, I do think he's that controlling that mentality of not letting other people have a say in it. It's he wants to get it exactly how he has envisioned it. And it's hard for people to work with that sometimes. Might be disagreements, might be some strife, and it just gets the relationships just get complicated. And he might have found it easier if he could find a way not to have that person, then he probably just cut it out of the crew. And I will say the 9 people as well. So it's a little skewed there because there was only one camera at a time. So the other 2 camera people you see that they just did pickup days by themselves. Yeah. No production assistant even. Yeah.
John
I forgot.
Mastro Giacomo, yes.
Yeah.
Has been with him. He's the one person who's remained.
He continued, right?
Yes, yeah, through every single film.
He probably found that he could get along with John in a way that he couldn't with a stronger personality, maybe like Andres or just maybe John just served that role where he can understand what Neil wants and just accomplish that and doesn't push back, or I don't know what it is. Well, and I mean I noticed that there's no lighting, and the fact that he wrote lighting none really stood out to me. I don't think that I've ever seen that in any project. But I think to him, it's a signal. There's a message there. He's saying, we didn't need lighting. Look what I can do. Look at the quality of work I can make without lighting. Look how amazing this is. We don't need lighting.
Did you take anything from your experiences on Double Down with you into the future?
Yeah, I certainly did. I mean, I wanted to be a director of photography, so I was learning camera side and lighting. I would tell people, yeah, I've done a feature on 35 as an AC, as an assistant camera. And yeah, I pulled focus on film, and it helped some probably that I could say that. And yeah, I did mostly commercials after that. Would still work on features or TV shows or music videos or docs or whatever, and let's say more heavy on the commercial side. This was a foundation, I guess.
What's your overriding feelings about your time on the movie and those memories that stick out?
I was talking about the sort of breakdown. I don't know if that's too strong of a word, but between Neil and the cinematographer, and towards the end of it, it would get to where we would just shoot in front of his house on the street, and we would put the performers on Apple boxes and tilt the camera up at them, regardless, so we could use it in any background. We didn't go to the place where it was supposed to be or where we had got the rest of the footage. We would just do that, and that's when the DP just didn't care anymore, and it was kind of like, or it seemed that way to me. I guess I can't speak for him, but that's my memory of it. And Neil didn't have any issue with this, so you just get a blue sky, and you're looking up at there are all these shots, especially later in the movie, like this.
Yeah, at the end, there's like the head of the CIA and FBI, and there's all those
guys. I think that my memory is that it was very late in the shoot, and I think it was just exhaustion and like, this will be good enough, and there wasn't any care taken to like go find a proper location for these shots. We'll just do this. It'll be just as good.
And was that Neil's suggestion?
The DP was still on. It wasn't pickups. It wasn't with the other camera operators stepping in. It was, so it might have been the cinematographer just being like, yeah, okay, that's what you want. Let's go for it. I think he had already resigned to just get what Neil wants at that point, but I'm not sure whose idea it was.
Because have you seen any of his other films?
No, I just saw some like in looking for this, I saw a couple of trailers or pieces or scenes.
I mean, again, yeah, I mean, it's kind of fascinating for me in a way that you weren't fascinated just to go and watch any more of his films and think, oh, so what happened after? What happened next? That curiosity wasn't there.
So Eduardo, the sound mixer, and I actually lived together for a while, and after this, and in Los Angeles, we actually both lived in LA for a while, and he found it and showed me. I want to say it was like 2008 that he showed me this trailer. So it was kind of like, oh wow, good for him. He got it's out there, and there's some people watching it. And then through the years, it just got more distant for me, and I didn't I didn't realize he was still making films until I met this guy in Vegas once I'd moved back. And so he had bumped into Neil at like social functions and knew him as this independent filmmaker. And he was still going. I gotta like, a laugh. Oh, good. Neil, he's still out there doing his thing.
Yeah.
Okay, good for him.
Yeah.
That's fine. Great.
Another big thank you to our second interviewee on the episode there, Nick Fry. Actually, I'd like to give a double thank you to Nick, because when I first contacted him, he was slightly reluctant to talk. He felt he wouldn't have much to offer, and I think he didn't want people to feel he held any ill will. So this interview went from the possibility of him answering a few questions via email to him being more than happy to be recorded. Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate your time and trust. Again, it's interesting that what one person feels could be mundane and of little importance, we all find fascinating and illuminating. I hope you've enjoyed the double helping of chats there. If you have, then please like, subscribe, share, rate, and let all fellow Breen Weavers know about this little show. Next episode, we'll be taking another scheduled break from those lucky few who have worked with the Breenius, and we'll be joined by a special guest for yet more Double Down. Yes, Keenan Breen will be taking a deep dive into the film that started it all. Before I sign off, I just want to respond to a piece of viewer correspondence I received. Thank you for your letter, Russ, in London. You've asked what I wear when I interview the podcast guests. Well, actually, I wear a sleeveless denim shirt, and on it, I display my various medals. I've been awarded every medal. The Medal of Honor, the Medal for Meritorious Service, Defence Meritorious Service, Joint Service Achievement Award, Armed Forces Medal, Purple Heart, Heroic Meritorious Achievement, the Bronze Star, the Medal for Gallantry in Action, the Bronze Medal for Swimming 25 metres, the 1991 Sports Day second place sack race, Best Pantomime Dame at the 2015 Wharfdale Festival, and my Dennis the Menace fan club badge, the black furry one that looks like his dog, Nasha. Hope that answers your question.
You've been listening to My Scene with Breen, a Neil Breen podcast and a Bite My Thumb production. Your host was Neil Knight. Bite My Thumb can be followed on Twitter or X at Bite My Thumb, on Twitch at twitch.tv/bitemythumb, on YouTube at bitemythumbtv, or on Letterboxd at bitemythumb. All music was written and created by Cotsplays. He can be followed on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cotsplays, where every Saturday morning at 12 p.m. he'll be making live music. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and rate this episode.